Just if you have got a few more minutes, I mean, I pointed out that you have a belief, though. You started off this by saying that you don't have religious beliefs, you're not a religious person. But you do. You have a religious belief that you're on a spinning water ball flying through a vacuum. So if I may, there's a few points that I would like to cover with you, if that's okay with you, in terms of why that's not the case. I mean, I haven't got to cover any of those really, but obviously if you're in a rush to get off, I don't mind. The Earth being a sphere is asserted by way of this begging the question fallacy, which is called a proof of nothing Earth curve calculator that has geometry and is based on an R value. And if the Earth is a sphere with a radius of 3959 miles, then every distance to horizon can be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. That would be the geometric horizon. And we've got these images that show that the horizon, this claimed to be physical obstruction called Earth curve, is way beyond the distance and parameters and constraints of this physical geometry laid down in the maths. Now, as a result, we are told by the people, at least on my show Flat Earth Debate, that we don't have a geometric physical sphere edge horizon. The thing can't be seen, which leaves the model of a sphere Earth in complete tatters, because if you can't see the geometric horizon to measure it, you can't acquire an R value to assert physical geometry, leaving the idea of physical geometry in complete tatters. We call this argument the black swan. It's our number one debunking of the globe Earth begging the question fallacy that is to assume an R value and then reify it into existence at the point you see the world converge, the horizon, a non-physical location that people think is the edge of the Earth for boats to go over. It isn't. The horizon's not physical. But we've debunked that with this argument called the black swan. So, moving on, the sky, I mentioned a few times, is not a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we all enjoy breathing would fill the availability of space. And irony of irony, they call that area space. Outer space, a vacuum. Which it definitely isn't, because we'd have no gas to breathe. There's a natural law called the second law of thermodynamics, which would imply that the gas would want to fill the availability of volume it has to fill. It will expand in all directions to fill the space. And if space was a space, the gas would fill it, and we'd all be dead. We're not. Therefore, the sky is definitely not 10 to the minus 17 vacuum, as is asserted. Last but by no means least, it's asserted that we have a 15 degree in our turn of the Earth underneath anything that leaves the Earth. It's asserted by things like snipers, and it's called the Coriolis effect, that's its most familiar name. It asserts that things that leave a turning Earth will, from the ground at least, be experienceable with a deflection at 15 degrees an hour. Unfortunately, that would imply that if you took off on a helicopter, you'd be able to wait for the country west of you to come to you as the Earth turned underneath. Also, a drone, you'd launch it off at the equator and it would fly away at 1,000 miles an hour as you turned underneath it. Obviously, these things don't happen even though they're asserted to. So we don't have Earth turn, we don't have a sky vacuum, and we don't have physical geometry as is reified by a mathematical model called the heliocentric sphere Earth model by way of a begging the question, proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator. We don't live on a sphere. The Earth is obviously and observably flat. If you have got